So I'm just going to change it up a little bit and tell a fairy tale with a twist. Once upon a time, there lived a beautiful girl, Rindacella. Rindacella lived in a kig barsel with a wicked mepstother and 2 fugly sour blisters. Sadly, after her beloved father died, the wicked mepstother and the 2 fugly sour blisters made Rindacella their personal slave. Rindacella was trapped and very sad and lonely. Her only escape from this nightmare was when at night an exhausted Rindacella would read from her very small book collection, books like Princess and the Frog, Snow White, Sex and the City, and Sleeping Beauty. Now, as it happens in fairy tales, or Terry Fails, one day Cinderella heard that the Pransome Hince who ruled the lands was throwing a ball of fancy gold to find himself a faithful and devoted wife, a waithful and devoted fief. The Pransome Hince invited all of the pillage people for miles and miles around, especially the pitch pillage people. Rindacella was so excited as she overheard her wicked mepstother and the 2 fugly sour blisters share and discuss all the extravagant and delightful details while she worked on her knees, flubbing the scraws. Rindacella spent many days making ball gowns for her wicked mepstother and the 2 fugly sour blisters, and this was on top of her normal chores, and Rindacella had no free time. She worked through the night after night, on her own gown, hardly sleeping. But Rindacella was riding the wave of opportunity, and maybe, just maybe, the Pransome Hince might choose her to be his princess, and she could leave this horrid prison that she was held captive in. Rindacella dreamt long and hard into the night as she secretly worked on her own gown. On the night of the ball of fancy gold, and as an exhausted Rindacella made her way to her bedroom to find that those 3 evil bitches, those 3 Bevelitches, had raided her room, found her beautiful gore-bound, and shorn it to Ted's. Rindacella threw herself on her bed and she scried. She scried and scried and she scried some more. And as Rindacella took her last tissue, there was a sudden puff and a shimmer and a glimmer and a poof. And her hairy Modgother appeared. Now Rindacella was gobsmacked. Not only was her hairy godmother standing there in front of her, but she was also holding in her hands a rather large Maggie-Pie. "Dear Rindacella, aren't you in a fine mess?" says the hairy Modgother, as she hands Rindacella a roll of blue paper to mop her tears, and takes in Rindacella's clothes, or more to the point, her roti dags. Without any wasted time, and with a puff and a shimmer and a glimmer and a poof, and a wave of her Maggie-Pie, the hairy godmother tramps forward Rindacella's roti dags in her beautiful gore-bound, her thongs into glass slippers, a pumpkin from the garden into the kig golden goach, and field mice into white scourses. Rindacella was all set for the ball of fancy gold, and as she settled into the kig golden boach, the gary godmother warned Rindacella, "Rindacella, the magic will only last to 12. You must be home before midnight." Blah, 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 blah. Rindacella, whatever, she rolled her eyes and relaxed and sat back to sip her first ever glass of champagne as the kid golden boat rolled towards the ball of fancy gold. Now, as this is a fairy tale, naturally the Pransome Hince fell in love with Rindacella, and they danced and danced long into the night. Before you know it, midnight clock struck, and Rindacella staced down the res towards the big golden coach, and just as she breached the rottom, she slopped a dripper The next day the pransome hints travelled to all the pillage people, looking for the beautiful girl who slopped a vipper. On arriving at Rindacella's house, she tried the slop dripper on the mapstother's stinky foot, and it finned it. Next she tried the slop dripper on the two fugly blisters' particularly gross feet, and luckily it finned it them either, and the pransome hints was quietly quite relieved. The pransome hints, lastly, he tried it on Rindacella, and it did. It really did. And in that romantic moment, pransome hints got down on one knee and handed her a bunch of red roses, and still with a half-price tag still on them. And for all the world to hear, the pransome hints proposed to Rindacella and proclaimed, "I love you, Rindacella. I choose you to be my wife. We will live a magnificent and adventurous life." Rindacella's dream had come true as she placed her rose-coloured glasses on her face. The pransome hints continued, "I will travel from lands to lands, and as you, my beloved dear wife, you will bear my many children, and as my wife you will cook and clean for me and wash my clothes and lay with me whenever I demand." I know, right? He was quite the romantic. As it turns out, Rindacella did accept the pransome hints' marriage proposal, and they got married, and it was naturally quite a huge, extravagant wedding. But let's fast forward to 3 months later and the strange disappearance of the pransome hints. And as the full moon rises into the night sky and Rindacella places her books on spells and herbs to one side, she closes her lid on her iPad and the many how-to tutorials on YouTube, and she dines on the extremely rare and delicate secret delicacy of Princess Frog's legs. And she reflects quietly on the last 3 months with the prince and his offer, and she says to herself, "I don't tucking think so." And Rindacella lived happily ever after as queen and ruled the world. Now, the moral of this story is, if you ever meet a pransome hints, you never know how your life could change if you were to accidentally slop your dripper.